Welcome! In this video we'll be taking a quick look at Mikazuki, a legendary grade Debuffer class Elune. Looking at her base stats, at 6-star max level 60, her HP is a decent 22.2k, with her attack being a not very nice 5.7k. Her physical and magic defense do start off at a decent 3.3k each. Her attack speed at 108 puts her a little bit on the higher range of the mid-type range for a speed, making her not too slow. As you transcend her up to the max at +5, her HP does go up to a very nice 40k, with her attack being at a high 10.3k and her physical and magic defense being at 5.9 and 6k respectively. Looking in at her skills, her first skill is unique, as this is an AoE skill that does damage to all enemies. The damage is 210 plus 158% of attack as physical damage, as this is one of the highest, if not the highest multiplier for damage on a skill 1. The drawback to it is that the damage is divided between all enemies that it hits, meaning that if you do damage to 5 enemies, this is divided by 5. For example, if you attack an enemy with this skill and there are 5 enemy targets on the field and it does 10k, then the skill will do 2k to each of those enemies, reducing the damage very significantly. But as the number of enemies die and it becomes less, this skill will do much more damage, meaning that full 10k hit will go to whatever is left. As the skill is leveled up to the max at +6, the damage goes up to a very nice 1670 plus 222% of her attack. This makes the skill hit very hard, and is a very good skill for wiping out waves of enemies, or for using her in situations where you can just spam the skill 1 to kill enemies quickly. Moving to her special skill, Phantom Barrage, this is a multi-hit attack that only attacks the frontline enemy. This is a 4 hit that does physical damage equal to 220 plus 160% of her attack. This skill will also cause a physical effect that bleeds the target for 3 turns. It also does a nature effect that causes epidemic for 1 turn. The bleed effect is an 8% of max HP to the target, but cannot be more than 300% of her attack. Also in bosses, that bleed effect is reduced by 1/5. So it is very much lower, but as bosses have much higher HP, the amount that it bleeds is still pretty significant. The epidemic effect makes the whatever target has the epidemic take 1 more soul for whatever skill that they're using that consumes soul. As well, it also will move to any nearby enemy Elunes that are near it, meaning that once you apply it to one, then it will move to others that are close by. As this skill is leveled up to the max at 6, it will deal a very nice 1700 plus 223% attack as physical damage. This makes it equal to about the attack of the normal skill, but the normal skill is divided between all enemies. The bleeding effect does go up to for 4 turns, but the epidemic is still at 1. Moving on to the ultimate skill, Goblin Strike. This one will do damage AoE to everyone. Deals 180 plus 135% attack as physical damage to all targets. This will also inflict a curse effect that causes zombie for 2 turns. A zombie is a very nice debuff as it converts healing into soul damage, meaning that anytime the enemies heal, they will instead be inflicting soul damage to themselves, which is very good for dealing with many situations, especially those that have AoE healers through passive or through buffs like Weiwei or Freya. Going up to 6 on this, This goes up to 1170 plus 190% of attack as physical damage to an AoE, and the zombie effect goes up to a 3-turn duration. Again, this skill, the zombie effect landing, is something you would want, so having accuracy on her is very good, especially now with the current meta of seeing a lot of Artemiels on defense and air battles. That always revenges and heals their team. Instead of healing, the zombie effect can instead be doing soul damage to them, making the Artemiel useless and actually very detrimental to that team. This makes Mikazuki a very good counter to those teams that use Artemiel as their healer. Her first passive. The first passive is one that any time attack lands on an enemy, it reduces a random tolerance effect by 1 level. This means that it makes it harder for those enemies to get the resistances up through tolerance against debuffs. This also increases the crit rate by 20% of her skills when attacking an enemy that has a debuff. As she applies debuffs all the time, this means that she will also be reducing the tolerance levels for her to apply those debuffs successfully again, and will give her a 20% increased crit rate on anybody that has those debuffs. Her second passive. This passive causes a weakening effect that reduces the physical defense of the target by 50% for 2 turns when you crit, meaning that you would want to have her with a good crit rate to land those so that you can land those physical defense reductions, making her hit even harder as she does do physical damage. Moving to her passive 3, this passive increases her evasion by 50% when receiving attacks from any enemy with a debuff. This is especially useful if you're using her on a team with, say, something like Fahrenheit or Arslan that apply debuffs through their passive at the beginning of the wave. This means that all the enemies should have a debuff, making her able to evade attacks very effectively. This will also cause a spell effect that seals the enemy for 2 turns if she evades the attack from that enemy. So any enemy attacking her will be sealed. This seal effect makes it so that the enemy cannot use any skill that uses a soul when it's their turn, so they can only be using their normal skills. Moving on to the skill gem effects, the skill 1, the recommended, is 2 red for physical plus an orange for the crit rate. This gives a 5% chance to restrain the target for 1 turn. While the chance is very low, this is an AoE attack and will most likely be spammed a lot because it does do nice damage and has a chance to restrain targets for 1 turn. While you can go with a better approach to either making it a full crit build with full orange, or you can go for the damage on her as the damage is quite high and go full physical. The recommended, however, does give her a nice chance to provide more utility to this skill. But any way that you go is a good option, either full red, full orange, or the recommended. Looking at the special skill, the recommended again is 2 red for the physical damage and the orange for the crit. This one has a chance to petrify the target for 1 turn, as this is again a very low chance and a single target only effect. The chance is very low and not necessarily worth it. Going with a higher crit rate or more physical damage can actually be better for her on this skill. Looking at the ultimate skill, the recommended is the red for physical, the orange for crit rate, and the violet for the increased attack speed. This gives a 10% chance to paralyze for 1 turn. As this is an AoE attack, the 10% chance is low but is not bad, and can additionally paralyze the targets for 1 turn, making them able everybody to crit on that target during that turn. It does provide more use to this skill, but the skill already does very nice effects as it is, so not necessarily needed. Going with more crit rate or more damage through the gems is also a very good or viable option. Looking at her dimension slate, skills that you would, or aspects that you would want to focus on here are obviously crit rate being a very good one. Also accuracy to land those debuffs, as she is a debuffer and her debuffs are very nice. You would want to have good accuracy on her. Having more attack and HP are also good to give her survival, but accuracy, crit rate are two that you would definitely want to focus on with her to make sure that she lands those debuffs and that the crit rate gives her more chance to do damage. Gear sets for her can be varied and will depend on what you have available to you. Anything that increases her chances of landing debuffs, such as the full moon set, would be very good to use on her, as she does do a lot of debuffs and they are very good. The debuffer set 2 can allow you to land more of those debuffs if you get the full set, making sure that she lands the debuffs. High damage for her is recommended, as she does not necessarily need to be too tanky because her base stats are not too bad. She does do a significant amount of damage, which is very nice. Plus she has evasion built in as a passive to allow her that anybody that attacks her after she debuffs them will have a high chance of missing that attack. This means that she has even more utility and more survivability against those teams, making it very difficult sometimes to kill her. Try to get as much accuracy through whatever means you can, either through gears, stats, substats, or whatever, to make sure that you land those debuffs. Mikazuki is a very good debuffer and a very good Elune for both PvP and PvE, as she can do high damage to bosses and waves. She can also be very good for clearing out certain things. She's good for farming or for leveling fodder and PvE, but she is also very good because of her debuffs to bosses, as well as in PvP for dealing with air battles or guild content for clearing out enemies, as she does have very nice damage along with the debuffs to disrupt the enemy team's flow, as well as the healing to stop them from healing and kill themselves. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will answer them as soon as possible. Thank you.